Um, can anyone hear me? Can anyone hear me? Sure. Welcome to today's live stream. And today, yeah, I'm just going to be talking further on React. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about ReactJS and um, good to see you. What's your day? Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for the support. So, you know, the goal there today is to talk about React. And last, I'm just going to do a little bit of review of what I talked about in the last stream for those who were not around, so that you can really understand, where we are. And on the live stream as well, I'm not going to be using, yeah, good to see you, Illuminati. Um, nice to have you join the stream. Thank you for joining. So I'm just going to do like a rundown of um I'm just going to do a rundown of some of the things we did in the last stream, where we sort of like started introducing the concept of React and how to really, really understand what is going on with React. And yeah, I hope you find it um, interesting, and I hope you learn a lot. And yeah, that's my joy. That's the goal, right? So that you learn a lot and you can go ahead and understand the internal workings of all these tools, right? So I'm going to the ID I'm using is I'm using Stack Blitz, which is an online IDE for an online ID that allows us to an online ID that allows us to write everything, all our code inside of the browser, right? And the file that we worked on was majorly inside of this file here, and this is the first set of things that we did in the last stream. I talked about two major things that we are going to be working with. I said that we have these two packages that we are working with, which is the importing React from React here and importing React from React DOM right there. So if you want to know the version of React that we are currently using right now, we go to the package.json, right, to see what is going on. And here you're able to um sorry, we're able to see that we are using React version 18 and we're using it's a React DOM 18.2. So to understand what is going on, with our React, right, you can import those things, right? Once you import any of your component here, right, you can directly console.log them. So when you console.log all these things here, right, you can console.log. I said in last class that you can console.log what React in itself, right, and you can console.log React DOM here, so that you know what is inside of both of these objects called React, right? So if I open this in another tab so that it makes it easy for me. So another thing I can do here is I can bring this whole thing here. Let's just bring this whole thing here so that both of them are sitting on the same side here. And I can also get myself off the... Okay. We have only just one tab that is showing. Let me stop sharing, and I'm going to stop the screen and present again. All right, you're able to see both my browser, right? You can see both my browser and you can see both my browser and my VS Code. And let's just change some of the default CSS that we have. Let's change some of the default CSS that we have. The background color, the color should, I'm just going to swap these two. Put this here. So this is what we have, right? You can see that this is what we have right here, right? So I'm going to check our console, right? Check the developer tool to see what is going on here. So if you look at our console here, we are logging. Let's go to line main.js line. The main.js line 21. Yeah, we can pause this, and then there's another one on line 11. Line 11. Let's just put this back there. Sorry, React DOM.create route on a container has already been passed on the create route before. Is there another place I'm using? Okay. I'm trying to debug. I think we're able to comment this out as well. So, all right. Yeah. So right now we have something blank here and we have all this console.log here. So when you console.log your React gives us all of these interesting things here. Can you see this in my time? Can you see my screen clearly? I believe we can all see my screen clearly. So React gives us all of these, gives you the children, the component, the fragment, and all of these things here. And the React DOM, the client version, gives us the create route and the hydrate route. So what does all these things mean, right? And I think we can also see this in a better way again. I think you can see this here in this way. So we have your React DOM contains create potter, create root, find DOM node, flush sync, hydrate root, the render method, and it has the onMount component, the unstable render trees into container. And so in a bit to understand all this is what this packages return. And these are the beautiful things. So what can we do with this? Now, what we can do with this is that number one, you want to specifically specify that go into the client version, right? And only give us what is inside of the client version of this. So if we ask for the client version of this, then we are going to see what create root and hydrate root. Now, inside of our React, so those are the two things that we have whenever you install the React package. Those are the two things that we can use in our application. So now this is importing CSS. This is being done by the bundler. That's the reason why we can use our CSS. Now, the very interesting first thing is that we get our container using the document.id into this here, and you are able to use the React DOM, right, that we create here, and call this method called create root to create a root, which is your DOM render, right? This is a render here, and we can then use that render in our application, right? You can use the render you can call something like this. right, you can call something like this right here, or you can call so if you console.log again, let's learn. I want us to learn what is going on here. If you console.log this render here, DOM render, what are we going to have? If you console.log the DOM render, what are you going to have? So you would notice that the DOM render now gives you something called React DOM root. That is, your create root returns this. And what do you have inside of this? You have some of all these little detail, right? The callback, this here. You have all these little interesting details here, right? And what do we do with all of this, right? What are the things that we can do with this? Now, the beautiful thing that we can really do with this is that it has a method called what? Render. So it means that you can just directly render something. You can render something. And what can you render? It means that you can do a DOM render dot render, and it can render something that looks like this. If you do div hello, I mean, it can just do something like this. And if you notice, you would see this hello, right? How many persons can see this hello? You can see this beautiful hello that is being rendered here. So what is your DOM render.render doing? The DOM render.render is a way of what? Rendering in React. That is, it renders whatever we have. If we inspect the HTML that we have, right? For you to see closely the HTML detail that we have, how do we see closely? If you check the HTML that we have, you can see that what you just have this HTML inside of this container. This is our container, and the HTML is rendered inside of this container. This was what we talked about in the last episode of the stream. And what does this mean in React? Okay, what does this mean in React? Now, what it means is that if you see something like this, what? Let's say this were to be a span. If this were to be a span, as I change this into a span, you would notice that what? Now, inside of this place, what we have is a span. And this is the operation that is happening here. That behind the scene, React is creating this word. React is calling this function React.create what element. And it is passing, this is the type. This is called the type. And this is called a prop. And this is called what? The children. So if I uncomment this line here and I console.log this so that we can see what is going on. If we go down into our console to see what is going on, you will notice that what? We have this object here. And first and foremost is that this object, the type of this object is what? A React element. That's the first beautiful thing that you'll notice. The type of the object that we have in this inside of this object here is what? A React element. But the beautiful thing is you have this prop, right? And the prop contains style and children. So I can change the children to what? Hello, right? And let's assume that I had something like this. If I had a style to this now, and I say color is red, we say something like this, refresh this. Oh, sorry, we should be able to say something like this. It should be a string. So you can see that this span has become what? Color red, right? The span is now color red, right? So it means that this code here is the same thing as what React is doing behind the scene here. That is, React is calling what? This function called create element. So there is a function called React.create element that your JSX called to create this particular span. And the moment it created this span, it will now render the span. So if we want to break it down into JavaScript, in terms of JavaScript, what is going on? The first step of what is going on is that what? You have what? I need let's say I need a readme. to explain the internally what is going on here. So what is going on here? I'm just going to comment this out. So what is going on here is that the first thing is that what in JavaScript, let's say this is similar to JavaScript. You are doing a document dot create what? Create element of what? Of span, right? After we have done this, the next step is that what? You are what? Attaching what? You are doing what? Span dot what? Span dot style, right? Dot what? Color equals to what? Equals to red. And after that, you're saying that what? The text content of the span dot what? Text content is equals to, what is our text content in this situation? Our text content is what? Hello. And this is what we have. And the moment you have this, how do we show this? How do we append this to our DOM? So you are able to do what? Your document dot body dot append, and you can pass in what? Your span. And this is the whole process of showing something in your vanilla JavaScript. Whereas if we move to the React land, if we are in the React what? Space, to move into the React space of things, right? You can always what? Where are my tabs? Where are my tabs? Where are all my tabs? So if we move into the React space of thing right here, you just pass something like this. You just pass this angle bracket right here, and React takes over and creates the whole thing itself for you. So React create a span, set the style of the span, and put what? Hello inside of what? That span. So the style and the what? The children, the span, the style, and what? This prop and the children, right? This the whole thing that we call prop here, you can see that what? They are attributes. They are attributes of what? This span. And React keeps it inside something we call what? Props. React keeps it inside of something we call props. So there are two major categories of what? Props, right there. You have the main thing, which is the children, something that will be showing for our user to see. Or you have what? Something like an attribute, which is what? The style right here. And there are other details here where you have like the ref, the type, and the store and the other things. But basically, this is what React does to show, to render what you just did. And look at this object again. It is object, and the prototype of it is what? Is inheriting from what? Object. So this type of what? Object is what? Is a React element object. React element object, and it has all the details right there inside of it. Now, if we take this a little bit further, this is another example that I showed in the last class here, right? That what? You can what? You can also create another one called what? React create element what? Div, and set it to be null. And let's assume here you can pass the span that you created here, you can pass it as children. So if you look at it again here, I'm passing the span here as what? Into an array as children. So if I console.log the div now, what do we have inside of the div? What do we have inside of the div? If you look at the div now, the div is going to contain what? An object. And inside of the object, it has what? Props. What is the things that the prop contains? The prop contains children, which are, there are two arrays, which is hello and the span. Hello and the span. And if you click on this arrow again, it will tell you that what? The span now is another object of its own. So you can see that this span now was replaced with the whole of the React object that was created, and that is the span right there for us. So these are the magic that is happening under the scene that I talked about extensively. All right, and then we talked about how we came about the idea of what? Components. So this one here is a React element, just like your DOM element. What we have here is what? Components, right? So how do we up with a component. A component is just any function that returns a React element. The component right here is any function that returns what? A React element. So this is the same thing as what? This will be replaced with something like what? If I want to turn this into create React element, it's going to be what? React dot what? React dot what? Create what? Element. And you pass it what? The type of the element is what? The first one is what? A div, right? And you are saying that what are the prop? So you can say that, well, if it doesn't have any prop, you can pass null, right? And we can say what the children here is what? You can say the children is a string of what? Hello React. And this is what happens here. That is, any component, anything they call component. Okay, is it just two things? Just create React. Create React is expecting prop. If prop is null, children, yeah, it should support children. Sorry, it should support something like this. Something like this should be possible. So this is create React here, which is creating what? Creating, or you can pass empty object. If it's not allowing us to pass this, should be able to accept empty object. So this is a component, that is, it's a function that is returning what? A React or a valid React element. A component is any function that is returning what? A valid React what? Element. And I can undo this and go back to what? The initial thing that we have. So how do we call the component now? You can call the component by saying what? Sample, right? Sample f, and you call it like this. And that is what you are literally what? Calling a component. You're literally calling a component. So when you call this, right, when you call this here, it is going to be what? Rendering, showing us what? This particular value here. And you can pass this to what? Our render again. Where's our render that we have up here? So this render that we have here, you can pass it directly to the render. So let's assume here, I want to pass example of what we have there. So instead of me passing the span in this situation here, I can just pass what? The sample what? I can pass what? The sample what? F right there. And you will see that what I have rendering now is now hello React. And this is the basic way in which what? React sorts of what? Does its own thing here. That is, you're just calling the sample F as the function. So React now gives us another capacity, right? Instead of us calling it as this function here, you can call it as what? Sample what? F. And you can call it this way. So when you call a React component this way, right there, you are what? This is what all of us know, right? Most of us just know this, right? You know this as the popular way of calling React component. But this, when you write something like this, React is calling this sample F as a function. So for those who are not around, you understand what is going on now. That anytime you see something like this, anytime you see this component, right, you understand that what React is calling this function, and it's going to be returning whatever is here, right? So that content can be rendered right there. And another thing that happens is that we can now accept what props, right? That's the beautiful thing that we now have now. You can now accept what prop, right? We are able to accept prop. So what is prop? Look at this component on line 20. This is an arrow function called sample. It accepts the parameter called prop, and it's returning what? This div, the spread of this prop, and prop.children. So if I console.log this prop inside of this place, and I want you to really understand what is going on here. Now, let's see, is there a place I'm rendering? There must be a place where we are rendering that sample. So here, this is the place where we are rendering that sample. If I enable this here, right here, so you would notice that inside of this place right here, we are rendering what? Hello React, right? And it is logging what on line 21? And it is logging, what are the things that is logging? It's logging all of the prop. Look at the prop now. This is the children. That is hello React is the children. The ID is what? Sample. The class name is what? Class. All the what? attributes that we pass to this component are what? Rendered. All the attributes that we pass to this component are rendered. Again, this is another component. App is another component, right? It is just returning all of these things again here. So all these things that are being returned, they will be converted to their valid HTML. All what is being returned will be what? Converted to their valid HTML with the help of what? With the help of what? React. With the help of what? React. With the help of what? React. With the help of what? Our React. And that is what we are teaching as JavaScript what engineers, right? As JavaScript engineers. I hope everybody understands. For those who were not around last Saturday, I hope you sort of understand and you're able to catch up till where we are now. So taking this forward right here, again, we said that the reason why this particular word react.render, this DOM render.render right here is that you have this react.strict mode. We are wrapping our app with this react.what? Strict mode. And what react.strict mode does is that it allows us to see our console 2 times. It what it does is it helps you to render something 2 times. So if we don't put this strict mode in our work, right? If we don't put this, let's say I duplicate this whole thing. If I duplicate this whole thing and I comment out the first one right here, and I just put in my what? Let's say I just put in my React. I just put in our app. You will see that my console.log is just going to be what? Our prop is just going to be logged only once. The prop is just logged only once. But the moment we go to the strict mode, the prop is going to be rendered what? Twice. Props are going to be rendered twice. That is, React does rendering 2 times anytime we are in our what? Prop. Like anytime you are in the strict what? Mode. So this strict mode in itself is just a React component. So see this strict mode as what? A React function that is calling this what? App as well. And this app again, I can turn this app into what? A proper component, right? I can turn that app into a proper component, right? And I can do this as what? App. And everything is still going to render very beautiful. So your React components, they are functions, true or false. React components, they are functions, true or false. I think that is the major thing I need us to understand. Our React components, they are what? Functions, true or false. If they are functions, you agree with me that they are functions, then those functions must have a return statement where it is returning a valid HTML, right? Do we all agree? Right? It must return a valid word HTML, and that HTML is the combination of your HTML and your what? And your JavaScript in what we refer to as what? JSX, right? That is what brought about the concept of what? JSX right there. So do we all understand the concept of JSX now? And I can move forward, right? So in today's episode of the stream, right, the major thing that we're supposed to talk about is that we want to really understand what does prop means, right? What does prop means? And what does our state, right? State, what is state in React? Those are like the 2 major new things that we should be looking at. And another thing that we should talk about is that I'm going to talk about something very, very, very fast. Okay, yeah. Those are the internal detail, right, of React. Those are the things I will be talking about now, where we're going to talk about what we've started looking at our props, right? We started looking at our props. If you want to really understand our prop is again, we can go to our component, this sample component, right? Here, all the things that we are passing as attribute, to this sample, all the things that we are passing as attributes to this sample. Let's clean this place up. all the things that we are passing as attributes to this word sample, all the things that we are passing as attributes, they are what referred to as prop, including this word, this React, hello React in itself. Hello React itself is a prop. So hello React in itself is a prop right there. And another thing is we can now do what? This is the beautiful thing now that we can do with React. You can have as many sample as possible, because you can do something like this. You can do a div. You can do a div. You can do a div like this, and you can put your sample inside of that div. If you put your sample inside of that div, right? So it means that there is a div at what? There's a div now that is what operating. So if we check our element, you will see that what there is a div, right? You can see this div now. The div, there is one div and there is another div here. And you can always duplicate this one and what? And this is the beautiful thing here. So you can duplicate this again, right? You can duplicate it, and you can duplicate it as many times as possible. And this is the power of what? This is the power of your React. That is, sample in itself is now a component. Sample in itself is now a component, you can see. And they are doing what? Different things. Another thing that we can do is what? We can start using our own prop, custom user prop. That is, you can have your own prop. An example of a prop that you can have is, let's assume inside of this place now, we can have a prop for let's say we can have a prop for how do I do this now? So instead of calling these children prop.children, instead of calling these children, what can I do here? What can I do? I'm thinking of a way to, I mean, let's leave this like this. Let me just try to do another prop. ID. What other prop can we have? What other attributes can we have to HTML that is different from these common ones? What other attributes can we add to HTML that is different from these common ones that we have? We have the ID, we have the class, we have the style, we have what other attributes are common? Anybody wants to help me with attributes now? What are attributes that we can apply? What are attributes that we can apply here? Any other attributes that we can apply here that we can pass as prop? Maybe we can say that we can pass. Okay, we can pass any of the maybe data, any of the area related attributes, right? Any of the, or we can pass a role, right? Let's just see if we can pass a role. So here we can just say maybe the first one should have a role, right? Just do a role, and this role is, maybe let's say this is a list now, even though it's not a list, but I mean that's something that we can do. Yeah, you can see now that for the first one, the role is now list. You can see this role here, but you can see for this second one, role is not here. This second one, role is not here. And that is the beauty of React here. That is, this first component sample here is different, right? This first component here, this sample is different from what this second one is different from this second one, even though they are coming from this, they are cut from the same parent called sample, but they are outrightly very different things. Outrightly very different things. Does that make sense? So this is the power that you can now pick and choose what you use to create a component. For example, now you can have what in a normal, let's say in a normal HTML project, in a normal app. What are the things that we can have in a normal app? So in a normal app, you can have something like, you can have the header. So you can have a header. You can have a footer, and we can have what? We can have a body. So right now you see that we don't have any of these component called this header, this body, this footer. So if you want to create our own components now, then you can go ahead and create what? Function what? Header, and it should return function header should return what? Return a div called what? A div that contains what? Header, and it should also have what? You can duplicate this and call what? Footer, and you can call this what? Body. So for those that so for Stanley and Abdul Qadri and the other folks that are from the same maybe school of engineering thing there, this is similar to what we talked about today, right? That there is a make what? There is a make what? There's a function that React just used to create all this HTML and insert it to our page. And that's what is happening here. And that's the whole thing that is happening here. That is, you see that these functions now, this function is representing one portion of your HTML, this footer is representing one portion of your HTML, and this body is representing one portion of your HTML. And that is what our component. So we can now pick and choose. So instead of us passing this body right here, so we can decide to pass the body as a prop, right? You can pass it as a prop, or you can even do something like this. You can do a destructuring to pass. So for your body now, what we have for our body is that our body expects that what? Open body and what? Open body and close body. And inside of the close, there should be a child here. Whatever is inside of this place here, body what? Child here, right here, body child. And I can then now go ahead and remove what? Remove this and replace this with what? What am I going to replace that with now, Stanley? That should be what? Children, right? And you can see that our children has now changed to what? The body child right there. And that's the beauty of us React. So what we are using now to accept what? Whatever is going to be rendered here, children, is what? The body. Is the body that we are using, right? Is a props. Sorry, props. That is, this children is a prop. So assume that this is what? A prop here, prop, and we are doing a destructuring of what? You are doing a destructuring of what? Const what? Children equals to what? Props dot what? Props dot what? Dot children. This is what we are doing here, right there. Did I get the spelling of the children? Children. So you can see that this is our what? Props dot children. Or we are saying that what? You can destructure this right directly from prop, and that's valid JavaScript here, there. And you can say that what if there are other props, right? If there are other props, other things, so you can say what? Rest, right? The rest right there, and you can spread the rest into what? Into this place. And that is what you can see that what. So now if we pass what? If we pass, let's go to our body. If you pass another attribute, so if you pass what? A ID, and you say what? This is what? Body, and you would notice now that what? We will now have what? ID body, right? You will have a div that have what? The ID of body in our work here. And that is what. So this ID is now what? A prop. The ID is a prop. The ID is a prop that has turned into a valid HTML attribute. So now we can do some interesting things here, but this is just the basic understanding of props here. Any question, right, from anybody here? Any question from anybody here before we start going far? Any question from anybody before we start going far? Okay, I assume that we all know, right, what is going on. I assume that we all know what is going on right there. And another thing is what? This is another very interesting thing that we can do. All right. So we can do, there are some specific props that are important for us to know about. Which one is the most important of the prop? The children, right? What does the children means? The children means that whatever you wrap that React component with becomes your children, right? That's children. Then we have other props, important props like what? You have class. In React, class is class name in React. Your class is what? Class name. In So let's assume that we want to pass a data test. I think we passed a data test to this. Yeah, a data. Let's say we want to pass a data hyphen, a custom attribute. Now, if you want to pass a custom attribute, if we need to pass a custom attribute, So let's say we want to pass a custom attribute to our body. So let's say we want to pass data hyphen age is equals to what? Data hyphen age is equals to, say, 99. And if you go into our work here, we are able to see what the data hyphen age equals to what? 99. And that is what becomes a valid attribute there, right? It becomes a valid attribute, Another thing that we can now do is what? You can do some what? Conditional rendering inside of your component. How many of us are aware of conditional rendering inside of our component? You've seen something like that before, a conditional rendering inside of what? Our what? Component. Conditional rendering inside of our component. Right here. So we are saying that if this, so you want to do something like this, let's say inside of this body here. If children is true, right? Just render children. Else, say that what? No child. Is this possible? Can we do something like this? Can we do something like this? That is, I said anytime we are within the curly bracket zone, we have entered into JavaScript. Is that correct? Anytime we have within the curly bracket zone, we have entered into JavaScript. So you can do a ternary operator. That is, if this is true, right, do this. Else, do what? Do this, render this. So let's assume that inside of this body here, I want to come with another what? Another body. And now you will see that what? When we render this second body on line 55, right? What can we see here? You can see that what? It is showing what? The no child by default, because there is no valid children. We are not passing anything children in this situation. However, we can pass in children like this, okay, as an attribute and say what? Child. And you can see that it has changed. So you must really understand what your prop in React. Props are what? Attributes that is passed down to your what? HTML element. Props are attributes that is passed down to your what? HTML what? Element. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Do we all agree? Do we all agree? And let's assume that we want to take this forward. We've done conditional rendering. Let's assume that we want to do another kind of rendering that involves, maybe our information is inside an array. So if we have an information from an array, right? So let's say const what? Const maybe names equals to let's do JavaScript JavaScript. We can do what? React. And what else can we do here? What else can we put here? React JavaScript. We can do what? Next.js. We can do what? Remix. So right here now, if I want to render these names here, what can I do? Anybody has a thought of what we can do to render these names here? If I want to render these names here, anybody has an idea of what we can do to render these names? Anybody wants to tell us how to do something like that in React? Anybody? To render what? To render what? Something in an array. How do we render something in an array? Can I pass something like this? Can I pass children? Will this work? Will this work? What is the error message that we have? So what is this saying now? Saying that what? Anybody wants to guess what happened here? What happened here? What happened? Programmatically, what happened? Programmatically, what happened? Programmatically, who wants to guess what happened programmatically? Programmatically, who wants to guess what happened? Who wants to guess what happened? So when you have names, when you have names of as an array, we have names as an array here, and you do what? Names dot join, and you do a name dot join. Is this similar to what we have here? Is this similar to what we have here? Is that similar to what we have here? It is similar. So when you just pass names as what? As prop to the children, because it's an array, it just does a what? It converts it with what? Dot join, and renders everything. So this is not what we want. So let's assume that inside of here, right, this is not what we want. It's not interesting. It's not doing what we want. What if we have this body here? We have another body here. And inside of that body, we can put a UL. Is it possible for us to put a UL here, a UL inside of this place? Is it possible for us to put a UL inside of what? This place? So if we put a UL there, we can go into curly bracket again, and we can go into JavaScript land. And you can now say names dot what? Map, right? And you call what? Your dot map. And you're saying that what? Each what? Or you can say what? Name is what? And what is going to, it should return what? Li of what? Li of what? Of name. Li of name. Li of what? Name. Li of what? Of name. So you can see that what? by default now, our name is returned what? How many times? The name is returned what? The number of the length of what? Of this array called names. So if we wanted to now show us the content of this name, you can now turn this name, that is this variable, turn it into a valid JavaScript. Let it go into the what? Curly bracket again, go into JavaScript land, and you can see that what it's now showing what? A UL that contains the JavaScript, what? The body, that is JavaScript is a li, React is a li, Next is a li, and Remix is a what? Is a valid li. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Are we all flowing? Right? Are we following me? Do we understand anything you want me to do again? Should I re-explain anything? Right? Should I re-explain anything? So if you're all following, good. So you understand that what in React now, the moment you are within our JavaScript land, the moment we are within our JavaScript land, you can do something like this, and this will be returned what? A valid React again. This will become a valid React element. And the only warning that we are seeing there is that what is the warning there? Each child in a list should what? Have a unique what? A unique key prop. Each child in a list should what? Have what? A unique key prop. So if we wanted to have a unique key prop, then it's easy for us to say that what? We must pass another prop as key right here, and you can pass it. They said it to be unique. So what do we need to do to make it unique? Let's just pass back the name there, right, as the unique thing there, and everything is now what? Working, and there is no what? Error message. And so when you look at what, when you inspect, right, when you go back to the element version and see the HTML that we have, look at this HTML now. You have a UL, and the UL contains li, and inside of the li you just have what? Your JavaScript. Inside of the li you have what? Your valid what? List. And another very beautiful, interesting thing that we can, that we can all still do is that I remember something that we could still do here. It just ran away from my head. I remember something that we can still do. That ran away from my head. I'm going to go back to that later on. But basically, what is happening here is that what we are now using React to render what? This what? Array of names, and it is rendering it inside the li, and it is passing it inside of what? A ul. Is passing it inside of a ul. So with the help of our array.map, we are able to what? To map through and pass what? Their respective what? Key, and pass their respective keys. Any question? Any question? Any question? Any question? Are we still following? Right? Are we still following? Should I keep going? So let's assume, right, that what? Another thing that we need to do is what? We need to start introducing the concept of what? Our state. We need to start introducing the concept of our state. And if we want to really, really understand what is going on here, a state, should I go ahead and talk about something called what? A state? Or I'm thinking that we should first talk about events in React. Should we first talk about events in React, or should we talk about states? Which one do you prefer? Talk about events, or should we talk about states? Talk about event, or should we talk about state? Talk about event, or should we talk about state? Okay, so Stanley said we should do the states. So generally, I hope I'm still audible. I hope I'm still very much audible. All right. So for state, we can do what? What does state means? Let's first break it down from there. What do you think state means in React? So state means that there is now an internal database that our component has now. All our components, they now have their own what? Internal database. When I say database, it's just relative. It's not a full-fledged database. That is, your component can now be aware of what it is going on within that component. Does that make sense? The component can now be aware of what? All right, it's okay, man. Thank you for joining this stream. I really appreciate, right? I hope you've learned one or two things, and I can't wait for you to maybe come and teach us some form of React, some form of Android development, one way or the other. Thanks for joining. How was your exams today? You said you were going to write an exam today. How was the exam? I hope you did well in the exam. All right. So, yeah, with our state, we are able to start keeping track of what is going on within a particular component. Don't forget that it is the same component that renders this body that also renders this one here. And this is really beautiful. If you come to think about it, think about it, the same component that renders this body here, this list of all these names here, is the same component that renders this body child. And these are the beautiful things that React does for us. They are the beautiful features that React brings. The ability to do components and control the flexibility of that component to display in very, very beautiful way, right? Those are the power of React. As I was saying earlier, right, that we now have state. But before I go to state, I want to show you something inside our React dev tool. So there is a React dev tool, right? There is a React dev tool that we have here. And that dev tool, so look at this dev tool here. It's even rendering 3 times. I don't know why it's rendering 3 times. Why is it rendering 3 times? So this is the React here, this app. So this is the app here. You can see that it renders the header, the body, and the body. Look at the first body. So you can see the breakdown. So the breakdown is the body contains children and the data age and the ID. So this React dev tool that we have installed in our is an extension that you can install will now give us every detail about your React element, whether it contains the header, like whether it contains any prop or any state. So here only body has the prop. What are the prop that the first body have? It has children, it has data, and it has ID. And if you look at the second body now, here it only has children, and the children is a UL. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying right here now, that with this React dev tool, we are now able to visualize what is going on about our React component. That visualization can help you to debug your project a lot more faster. Okay, and if you look at the footer does not have any prop. It tells you how it is rendered. It was rendered by this component called app, and it was rendered in this way with create React was called with create root, and it was called with React version 18.2. I like React so much. React is beautiful. React is very, very, very beautiful. And that is some of the beautiful things that React is really bringing to the table and doing for us right there. So do we understand the dev tool right there? We all understand the dev tool, the React dev tool, and some of the beautiful things that the React dev tool can do for us. So if you look at it again right there, let's introduce state. And I want you to pay attention as I introduce the concept of state. What did I call the concept of state earlier? I said the concept of state is what? Keeping some internal data inside our component such that the component is aware of what? A particular data. Now, so if you look at this body component, or let's look at this body component and put our state here. So the state is introduced by something we refer to as what? A React dot what? Use what? Use what? State. What did I call it again? A React dot what? Use state is the function that introduces state to our what? Our React. And that function returns what? The function returns a state what? Let's assume that it returns a state what? Object. And inside of this state object, the state object can be destructured into what? Const, the state in itself, right? The state in itself, and what? A set state. And a set state. So now, if I go ahead and check our body now, if we go ahead and check our body, I think the body should have states now. Maybe because we've not used it. Let's say, let's call it count. Let's call it count. Let's just call it count. Or we can call it count. And now we should be able to see the state of this app. Okay, it's not yet seeing the state. Okay, maybe because we're not using it yet. So if we want to shorten this line 40 and line 41, how do we shorten line 40 and line 41? How can we shorten line 40 and line 41? Stanley, do you have an idea? Abosede, do you have an idea? Abdul Qadri, how can we shorten this line 40 and line 41? How? So instead of us going to destructure on line 41, we can just destructure from line 40. And you can then destructure it in this way and say what? You can have your count equals to what? Comma, and you can have what? Your set count. And another thing that it expects you to have is that what? It expects you to have what? A default value, right? When you have your default value, it can be either an empty string or 0 as the first value. And that is what a state initializer is doing. A state initializer is doing right there. Now, can you see a new addition now in the React Dev tool now? Can you see a new addition in the React Dev tool? What is the new addition that you can see in the React Dev tool? So React is now keeping track of a particular tab called what? The Dev tool is now keeping track of a particular tab called what? Hooks. And that tab is what? It contains number 1, state. And the value of the state is what? 0 by default. So another thing that we can do here is that what? We now should all understand how to initialize a state in a component. We all understand now how to initialize a state in a component. You use your React.use state to create a state. And it has given us what? The state itself and what? A function to control that state. It has given us a function to control that state. And we call that thing what? A set state, right? A state dispatcher. That is, anytime you want to increase or adjust that state, you use this function called set count to adjust the value of that state. Does that make sense? So now, one thing that we can do is that what? We can then add what? Something like what? An event. So if we have this on click, notice the way we have on click in React. What is the difference here from our ordinary React? What is the difference from our ordinary React? What is the difference from our ordinary React? What is the difference from our ordinary what React? So the ordinary React, what does this mean? State is a prop of hook, or what does that mean? So the hook means that because anything that you do with use, anything that starts with use in React is referred to as a hook. So it was just keeping track that what that state was initialized by this use word state. So that's why it is now under the tab called hook. So under a React component, you have what prop, you have what the hook, and you have the detail of what they're rendering. So if we duplicate and have another one, and we can maybe call it what count what 2 and set count 2, you would see that what it would have what added another hook, right? It will add another hook to what to that body that we have. It will add another hook. You can see that what it has added another hook based on what that is. You have called another hook now, right? To create what another state. You've called another hook to create another what another state right there. So I was saying with the event now, is there what is the difference between this what event and the one you have in your normal React? What is the difference? What is the difference with this normal event that we have and the one we have in React? What is the difference? So in your normal JavaScript, your on click is what on, and what the on and the lower what everything is lowercase, right? In your JavaScript, whereas in your React, everything is what, right? It is what it is the Pascal case, right? That is the on is lower and the second letter is always capitalized. The second letter is always capitalized. And this way now, if we click on this div, if we click on this div called body, if you click on the div called body, there would be what? There will be what? Some what's it called now? If you click on this div called body, if you click on the div called body, think is this the body that we are clicking on? Any of the body. Let's just any of them. If we click on any of them, okay, beautiful. So if you notice that as I am clicking on the body right there, our state is increasing, right? Why is this state increasing? Why is the state increasing? Because as I click on this body, there is a command here that says that what? Click on this div. Any click that happens on this div, right? Increase. Any click that happens on the div, increase. Any click that happens on the div, increase. Any click that happens on the div, increase. And I'm really so it's so funny that nothing is being clicked on the second word, on the second word. So it is incrementing the count, is incrementing the count, is incrementing the count. And you know, another interesting thing that can really happen is that what as you are doing this event, this is now an event, right? We are able to pass this event. I'm going to go into details of what is going on with this event, right? But just allow me to explain it in this way, that is because that's the only way you can really see your state in action. So if you want to see your state in action, right, the state, you need like a kind of like an action, something to that can happen that can help us to track what our state right there. So that count is now hidden inside of this body. So if we want it to be visible, if we want that count to be visible, what can we do? the count that we have inside of this body, if we want it to be visible, what can we do? What can we do? So what we can do right here is that what you can say that we can, instead of showing the instead of just showing the children, we can what can we do to show this now? Let me just find a way to show this. Okay, I can just put a paragraph here, just put a p tag. Yes, I'm able to do this. I'm able to put a p tag here though. I can just do count, or let me just put a p tag here just for starter's sake, and I can do count. Oh my god, you are welcome, JS Coder. All right, all right. Yes, I can use the template literal to add text and embed the whole value of the state, right? Exactly, right? So right now, I mean, we have something very basic like this, very basic. And so this is just, as you click here, you can see that what, as you click, right, the values are, and the funny thing there is that the values are what, incrementing in what, in different what, at different space. Why is the value incrementing at different pace? Why is there maybe one? Why does one have count 10 and the other one count 11? Why does one have count 10 and the other count 11? Anybody who wants to, who can tell us why? Because basically the function body here, right, is the general component, right? Welcome to the stream, JS Coder, right? And inside of our app, we have what? There is one body here and there is another body here. And these are two separate what? Separate React elements. So the body child has its own what? Its own what? State. And the second element, again, that is this body, has its own state. Does that make sense? So they both have their what? Their different what? Their different state at work. And that data is inside both of them, and that data cannot leak out to another component. So hence, you understand the reason why we have state now is that what? State is a database, or a database inside of our component. Does that make sense? So the state becomes what? A database that is now inside of what? Our component. So for as many components you have, you can now start having state inside of it to store the data, to keep that data for what? For your future use. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And that is the beauty of what? Our state in what? In React. That is the beauty of our state in what? In React. So the beauty of state again in React is that what? It's what? The beauty of state in React is what? Is that what? There is now a database inside of each of our component. There is now a database inside of what? Each of our components. Does that make sense? There is now a database from each of our what? Our components. And that database is what? That contains what? The content of what? The state. And that state data is controlled by what? A event called on click. So the more we click, right? The more we click, the more we can increment the value. The only way to reset this database is by what? Refreshing the state of the app, right? You refresh the state of your app and we go back to what? The beginning again. Any question? Any question? Any question? Any question? So again, in simple terms, we all understand how to declare your state, set the default value. So this default value can be what? Can be two things. It can be either a single value or a arrow function, or a function that returns a data. So let's assume that you want to carry out an expensive operation. You have some data, right? And you want to maybe map the data, right? And you want let's say you want to what can we do now? Let's say you have a const. Can I create const 1 to 2? Let's say we have const, maybe numbers, and you want to do numbers equals to maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we want to our count to start by default at what? So you want to do something like this now, issue what? Huh. Yeah, I'm going to talk about more areas of where states are very important. Now you sort of like see more states right there. So here we can just do what? Numbers dot length. So numbers dot length becomes our default what? Number.length becomes the starting point. Anytime we start now, our count now will now be what? 4, because numbers.length is our starting point. Numbers.length is our starting point, and you can keep increasing, right? You can keep increasing. So long as you are clicking on the body, you can keep what? Increasing. Anyhow. Now, again, the idea of state is you just want to store some data. That is, let's assume that if you have a drop down, and the drop down is like if they click on the drop down, you want to open that drop down. You know, all this feedback. You remember this feedback thing that we have inside of, I can't remember those feedback things that you see on sites where, what do we call those things again now? All those feedback where you click on the title, all those frequently asked FAQ, where you click on the FAQ and it opens down the drop down of the content of that FAQ. You remember? So that component in itself now can be a component, and you want to store the state of each of those feedback. So if they open the component A, you don't want it to affect the component B or component C. That is an example of where you need state. Because if they click the first open what? FAQ, you will set the state to not closed again. Now you set the state to open. And if they go to another what? FAQ, and they click on that one to open, you want to independently store their state to be different. That is, you want each of the components to be aware of the action that the users are doing, and that is the use of state. The use of state in any React application is that what? You want your components to be aware of any action that the user is trying to carry out. So most of the time, if somebody clicked on something, you can turn the state to be true. And based on what the value of the state is, you can now what? Determine what the user will see. And that is the idea of state. That is, for prop is not internal, it's not hidden. You know that prop is not hidden, Stanley. Prop is visible for everybody to see, right? Because we are passing it as an attribute. But if you want there to be some internal information that only the action, the clicking, the event that can control the behavior of those internal states, and that is where state becomes so powerful and useful. And that is something you probably don't have in your normal React. Am I making sense? In your normal JavaScript. Does that make sense? Now, that is something we don't have in your normal JavaScript. That is, you don't have a way to internally store something that is only that thing that is aware of it, except you create a prop, a parameter that you attach to that element. So, and that is still not hidden, right? You know that is not hidden, because anybody who does the query selector can always see the parameter of that thing and know the value. But for some how React creates some internal detail. I'm very sure that if we check React code base, we can really see how state is being created and being managed. I think state is being managed by something in JavaScript called proxy. Have we heard of proxy before? Have we heard of proxy before? Has anybody heard of proxy before? Proxy. Proxy. JavaScript is freaking large. So proxy is what? A proxy object wraps another object and intercepts the operations like the reading and writing and other, I think, optional handling. I can't really, I'm not sure whether it's proxy that they are using to undo state, though I can't really remember off the top of my head. But I'm going to research about it to understand the internal working of how React handles the state value and how it is hidden from us, because it's that being hidden that is really the source there. Because it is easy, it now becomes very easy for us to use it inside of our application, right? Let me quickly go to events so that we can talk about events and then we understand how events work. We started an introduction to events, right? That is, you can attach an on click here and you attach something like this. But let's break this down. So this is the event, and this is our event handler or our event listener. Does that make sense? This is the on click is the event, and this whole thing here is our event handler. So you can cut this now, and you can cut it and put it in a way that you want to do something like this. Const what? Const what? Const undo what? Undo click equals to what? You can paste something like this here. And we can then pass undo click. Undo click. Is this still the same thing? Is this still the same thing? It's still the same thing, right? But it's a lot more cleaner right now. It is better, it's clean. So you know that this is the event and this is the function that handles the event. And what else? Let's go deeper into let's go into our React and understand what is going on. So what is going on inside of what is the event object in React? How does the event object look like in React? Is it a normal event object that we usually have, or React sort of creates its own event handler to handle their own situation? So what is this object return? Now this object is called what? This object is called what? A synthetic base event. And it has its own property, right? And it's inheriting from where? The base The base object. So what are the prototypes that it has? It has is persistent, persist, and prevent default and stop propagation. It has its own constructor, and it has the hotkey, the bubbles, the cancel, the client X, client Y, and it has, get modifier state, is default prevented, is propagation stopped, is trusted, the metal key, the movement X, movement Y, and now there is the native event. Can you see this now? The native event. Is this familiar, right? Stanley, is this familiar? Right? So React also keeps a copy of your native event so that in case React does not have any method or property for you to handle some situations, you can revert back to your to your native pointer event right there and use that instead. So that is the beautiful thing with React there. The target is P, right? The P tag. And yeah, I mean, basically it's still very much the same process. All right. My body is very, very low now. My battery is going so low. I'm tired. And I think I should be bringing the whole class to a close in the next 15 minutes. It's been a very busy day for me. But so far, so good. We've been able to really look at props, right? I think in today's class, we did a summary of like where we started, what we did in the last episode, and we pushed it a little bit further, and we started looking at props, how you can use your props to keep some data, how you can then bring in state into what we're trying to do, and then how we can bring in event into all of these, where event features in all of these beautiful words, in this beautiful detail right here. So now, before I go, right, let's do some amazing thing again. Let's do some interesting thing here. Let us put a button beside each of these li. Let's put a button beside each of these li, and let us call it what? Like. We are going to put a button beside each of these li, and let's just put the button first. So in literally meaning, right, we could just come here and put a button here, and we can put a button here and call it what? Button. So here you can now say the button is what? Like. Can you see the button now? Why is the button, like, why is the loop created for us easily? See, React is beautiful because we just needed to put button inside of what? This li, and automatically we have how many buttons? How many buttons do we have now? We have what? We have our 4 buttons. Beautiful. So now, if we want JavaScript, React, Next, and Remix now to now have their own like, each person to keep the number of their like, because now this is the general like for everybody. Do you agree? Like, the like that we are having here is the general like for everybody. But let's assume we want JavaScript to know its own like, you want React to know its own like, you want Next to know its own like, and you want Remix to know its own like. What can we do in that situation to make sure that each one of them have their individual likes and they can be aware of their own value? And that is, again, the beautiful place of where state comes into the picture right there. And what will I do? I want to cut all of this now and turn it into a component on its own. So the whole of the li, I want it to be what? A component on its own. And we can say something like this. We cut this out and bring this again into what? A function library, JavaScript library or framework, and it's going to be something like this, and it's going to return what? Li, right? Return this li, and when it returns this li, let's just open this into a bracket here and return this, and we are able to just pass JavaScript library to this whole thing here. You'll just pass JavaScript library, and then you can pass this whole thing here, and everything should work. Now our name is not working, so what can we do to make sure the name is working? So we need to pass name as a prop, right? Equals to what? Name. So if we pass name as prop, so we are passing name to our prop, but we are not accepting it. So we can now come inside of this place and accept our what? Name as a prop, and automatically our name is showing here. This is the beauty. Like, this is fucking beautiful, because you see how many change that we just did to quickly change the way the app was working, and it becomes dynamic and everything became so beautiful because of the ability of JavaScript components. And that is like the sweet, you can see the way we just turned everything into components, and boom, we have something really working. So inside of this place, we can create our own state. What is the first thing we need to create our own state? We need a React dot what? Use state right there, and we can set the default to be 0. Once we are done with the default, you can come in and destructure, right, and say likes, comma, set what? Set what? Likes. And you are able to say what? So now we now have likes, and each of the elements have their own like. So here you can just put what? Likes here. And now they should. So what happens when they click on the highlight? So you want to say that there should be an on click, right? On click. And it should have its own what? Undo what? Undo what? On click or handle click. And this is the beauty of React. It is beautiful because I'm not sure, like, if we were to be writing JavaScript, pure vanilla JavaScript here, we are able to quickly change many things the way we are changing things here now. So you can do what? Const what? Undo click, and we can say that what? We have the event here. It gives us an arrow function, and we can come in here and we can set what? Set likes to be what? We can set likes to be what? Likes plus what? Plus 1. And now, by default, you can see that what? We have 0 beside each one of them, right? I don't like the way that is rendered. We need some white space there. We need some white space there. So you can see the white space right there. And we need another white space here. I think I need another white space here. All right. So now, if I click on what? Can you see what is going on? Can you see what is going on? So JavaScript now has its own internal like, the value that is only for JavaScript, thanks to our state. And if I click on what? Remix. Remix has its own internal state that is different from JavaScript state. But the beauty is that everything is keeping the record of what? The count of everybody together. And this is amazing. And this is freaking amazing. It's the beauty and the power that React comes and brings to the table to make sure that our JavaScript is now what? Doing something amazing and crazy within very limited number of what? Code. So each one of them has their own internal value. And the sum total is that what is affecting the head count of everything. And it is so beautiful. And I feel like today we've done something around the props, we've done something around the state, we've done something around what? We've done something around our events. And those are like the three major things that really makes React work hand in hand together. So I think the only thing that we have left would have been, now we are able to move from our React to Next.js now, right? And start enjoying some of the benefits that Next.js have to offer, right? I think we might touch a little bit about some things around CSS, using CSS in your React, right? It's not something too serious. That is, you can use your CSS module, or you can use something like your style components, or you can use your tailwind, right? I feel like we should use tailwind for most of the things that we're going to be doing. And we can just, we're just good now. We are good with our basic React stuff, and then we should be, start writing some form of Next.js on the next stream. So in the next stream, we're going to just be what? Touching Next.js fully. That is what we are going to be doing in the next thing there. Wow, it's been an amazing how many hours now? Almost 1 hour 40 minutes of talking about React, talking about just to prepare us for. So okay, our boss said we should use Tailwind. Yeah, I mean, it's worth using. So we're going to use Tailwind, and we're going to just use that to talk about the CSS stuff that we want to do. Thank you for joining the stream today. It's like I said, it's just amazing that I can do this. And you can also join. I mean, we have like 85% on the stream today, and that's really beautiful. Every one of you from whatever place you're joining from, I really appreciate you. Abdul Qadri, thank you for always looking for more people to join the stream. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. Stanley, thank you for always commenting, and you don't know how much I value you guys so much. And for those other persons who don't even comment out as well, right? I really value you guys. Thank you for joining, and this is exciting for me. Just the opportunity to talk about these things together, to show you how these things work behind the scenes, just for you to ask questions and we can both learn together. I am learning, you're learning, and in the end, we're all learning to just become better, JavaScript, React engineers. And we can always take this forward and get good jobs and move forward in all our lives. So for everybody that has joined the stream one way or the other, this is my shout out to you guys. You guys are like the best. Thank you so much for joining. And I could just like keep on saying thank you so much. Right, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for joining, and I hope we can continue doing this. I hope I can keep getting the energy to do this. I can stay healthy, and I can just show up every Fridays and Saturdays. Fridays I'll talk about JavaScript, and on Saturdays we're going to be talking about React. So, but the major thing is we are building something, and that's the beautiful thing about it. Thank you once more, and have a wonderful night rest. Bye bye.